Won't be Ryan the Great, and today we are talking OG Anunoby, guys, who's the biggest star in this trade, if that's what you want to say. He has been traded to the New York Knicks. Obviously, RJ Barrett moving on to the Toronto Raptors. We're going to be talking about that. It's honestly refreshing to be talking about basketball for once. I feel like all my content in the past 2 months have just been all football, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I love football. It's just I don't know. I've been talking so much football over the past couple of months, even on my podcast. It's very refreshing to finally be talking some basketball, and I'm pretty excited for this video. So let's just get right into it. But before we get right into it, guys, make sure you guys subscribe with the post notifications on. Go subscribe to my Berlin the Great blog. Make sure you guys subscribe to my second channel at Ryan the Cloud Great. Make sure you guys follow me on X at Ryan the Great RTG. Make sure you guys follow me on TikTok at Ryan the Great RTG. Make sure you guys go listen to the latest edition of the CR7 podcast. Make sure you guys go follow me on Twitch at Ryan the Great Podcast. And after ladies and gentlemen, let's get on the video and let's roll that intro. Won't it be Ryan the Great? And today, oh hell yeah! Well, it's not that hard to understand if you know anything about football. Touchdown! A touchdown! Philly! And the Phillies walk it off! Alright, let's start the video. So starting off, let's talk about the actual trade, then we'll get into the analysis. So, the Knicks are getting OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, and Malachi Flynn, while the Toronto Raptors will be getting RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a 2024 second-round pick. So, what does this trade mean for the Toronto Raptors? Well, I think this was a great trade for the Toronto Raptors. I don't really view OG Anunoby as a very, very big key piece in winning a championship. Obviously, he can be a key piece in winning a championship. I just don't think he's that much of a needle mover between team that's trying to contend and team that is going to contend. I don't think he's that much of a needle mover. Teams do see it. Obviously, I think, in hindsight, the Raptors probably should have traded traded OG Anunoby last season because the Knicks offered 3 first-round picks, which honestly is just insane to me. But the Raptors now getting some really good players in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, guys that have played pretty well on a team like the New York Knicks that has tried to contend, but obviously they don't have as many touches, I guess you could say, in the world because of the fact that, you have Julius Randle, did have Mitchell Robinson, and Jalen Brunson. Obviously, Emmanuel Quickley playing behind Jalen Brunson. Yeah, now they get a chance to be developed at the Toronto Raptors, a team that has done pretty well developing guys in the past, like OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and Kyle Lowry in past years. Those are guys that have been developed and turned into really, really good players in the NBA. So I feel like now that the Raptors have traded for RJ Barrett, who's a hometown guy in Toronto, and Emmanuel Quickley, who has a chance to get a big payday depending on how he plays with the Toronto Raptors and being the starting point guard. These guys can develop pretty well, and we'll see what they can do. They just have to play well. The Raptors have to take their time in developing these guys, and they can be due for a pretty big payday when their contracts are up, most notably Emmanuel Quickley, who I think his contract expires after this season. But right now, the Raptors don't really have a superstar on their team. Obviously, they tried to do it with the big 3 with Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby. That big 3 obviously did not pan out. I don't think really anybody expected that to compete for a championship. But for right now, honestly, I think they're not even meeting expectations when it comes to their big 3. So trading OG Anunoby and maybe dumping Pascal Siakam at the trade deadline, depending on how desperate teams get for his services, or next offseason will determine, if the Raptors are going to rebuild or if they just think that moving on from OG Anunoby is the best option. I think the best option to take on that, if you're a betting man, is that the Raptors will most likely trade Siakam at the trade deadline. But I think it's a really good move for the Toronto Raptors. Moving on to the New York Knicks. I don't really like this trade in the present. If the New York Knicks are able to get a superstar next offseason and keep OG Anunoby for under $40 million, I think this would be a really good trade. But right now, I don't really like this trade. You're trading RJ Barrett away after you got him at number 3 overall, after you didn't get Zion Williamson. You didn't do a good job developing him. Quickley could have been played really, really well in these past 2 seasons. Just he's played behind Jalen Brunson. Once again, I don't think OG Anunoby is that big of a needle mover when it comes to teams trying to get into that conversation to compete, and then being a team talked about to compete for a championship. But, I feel like they're going to need some of these players when it comes to trading for Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns, or, in another universe, Joel Embiid. But most notably, it seems like the most reported, I guess you could say, Donovan Mitchell is probably going to come to the New York Knicks. But needing R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel quickly, having those guys would be a really, really good idea when you would want to trade for Donovan Mitchell or Karl Anthony Towns. I feel like that would be the best option, but trading for OG Anunoby, you don't even know if he's going to stay after this season. You don't even know if he wants to be in New York. I just don't think the trade makes much sense right now. Now, obviously, down the line, if they can go get a Karl Anthony Towns or Donovan Mitchell and keep OG Anunoby, then this trade will make sense. But for right now, at this current moment in time, on December 30th, December 31st, or 2024, early 2024, I don't think this trade makes too much sense. I just, right now, it just don't make sense. But we'll have to see. We'll see if the Knicks have a plan. Maybe if they can get Donovan Mitchell on cheaper than they think. I highly doubt that happens. They do have a lot of draft picks that aren't even their own, so that definitely does help them. Get a Donovan Mitchell or Karl Anthony Towns. But I feel like teams are going to want role players as well, like the Timberwolves or the Cavaliers, who were still trying to compete for a championship. They're going to want players, and trading away two top assets are not the best idea. We'll have to see what the Knicks do. We'll have to see what their plan is. But that'll do it for the video, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe with the post notifications on. Go subscribe to my brother, Around the Great Vlogs. Make sure you guys subscribe to my second channel at Around the Kyle Great. Make sure you guys will follow me on X Around the Great RTG. Make sure you guys will follow me on TikTok at Around the Great RTG. Make sure you guys go listen to the latest edition of the CR7 podcast. And make sure you guys go follow me on Twitter, Around the Great Podcast. And as always, Ryan the Great out. Peace.